Hello everybody, this is Della from The Beauty of Play. I'm doing our chalkboard drawing for our chemistry block coming up, and I thought I'd take you along as I talk about the chalkboard drawing, why I chose the elements that I did, and the drawing in itself. With many of my chalkboard drawings, I often do a little sketch and a couple practices before I actually put it up on the chalkboard. Here I've intentionally, maybe for the first time, looked at a foreground, middle ground, and background, and I am working on establishing the sky. Though if I had to do it again, I think I would have put the mountains in first and blended the background of the sky in a little better, because it was meant to fade from the light at the horizon up through the darkening sky, but the fade isn't as pronounced as what I'd like. The Waldorf pedagogy in general approaches teaching in a couple different ways. One is from the whole to the small, so broadening out, seeing the whole and the implications, and then working towards the small. And the other is always hand, heart, and mind. So how this affects how I'm approaching chemistry block is twofold. One, I want the chemistry to be very much oriented to real life experiences. So we'll be doing several projects like paper making, candy making, cyano prints, and dyeing with natural cloths, as well as soap making to illustrate chemistry. And we'll also be using a lot of art and some storytellings. Waldorf approaches science in particular in a discovery and critical thinking manner. So there's demonstrations that are done and observations made. So it's a great big notice and wonder. And then later on, those are recapitulated where you're reviewing what you did the day before, the observations that you made, and what they mean, the science behind them, and that eventually goes into the main lesson book. They approach chemistry specifically, or it could be the book that I'm using, Chemistry the Waldorf Way, approaches it through the 4 ancient Greek elements: air, fire, water, and earth. That's through the exploration of combustion, water, gases, and earth is the salts, so acid, bases, and so forth. In this drawing, I wanted each of those represented. I'm working on the fire right now, and you see the earth with the mountains in the background, and the air with the mist, the night sky. And I wanted to have water with a water drop coming off a limb to the left of the picture. But when I drew it out, I realized the perspective was just not going to work at all. So ironically, water is left out of this picture, even though that is the element that we started with in our block. Things with the fire, I wish I could have done better. You will see when I move to the right here that the logs in the foreshortening needed to be rounder and shorter and closer to the ground. They needed to be lower to the ground for this perspective. So like the fire in the sketches prior, much better for this drawing as well. The fire is perfect for the combustion part of our chemistry block. I wanted this to be both thematic for the season because it's summer, although I have to say in North Florida we do not go camping in the summer like most of the rest of the nation. And I wanted it to depict various elements where obviously chemistry is happening. Combustion is a big part of Waldorf chemistry, and so this campfire is the perfect representation for combustion. The campfire itself as well as the limb coming out to the side at the end of the video, is supposed to be my foreground and that closest to us. But like I mentioned before, I think that campfire needed to be lowered a little bit. And here you can see I'm putting in some color of the ground to ground my fire, which I will do for the tent as well. I was only going to do 3 logs and then realized that it was lacking some on the side, so you can see that I'm adding additional logs to my fire to the right and left of the logs that are already there. That I wanted to accomplish with this block was the integration of blocks that we've done previously, particularly botany and geology, maybe some biology, and Native America. That in mind, and with the 4 ancient Greek elements in mind, I wanted to have a wet on wet watercolor for each of the 4 and a Native American story for each of the 4. Using Angela Lloyd's color dynamic for our watercolor inspiration, and I'm also using the Keepers of the Earth series for my Native American stories. We've already done our first wet on wet watercolor which was water theme, and it turned out beautiful, both the watercoloring and the stories, in so many different ways. We're coming off a break for this chemistry block. We have taken April and May because those are the most beautiful times of year in North Florida off, and we are starting back in June when it's really starting to get hot. And so the wet on wet watercolor really was a soothing way to spend a few minutes with art in a way to prepare our mind, body, and spirit for the unit ahead. In the same way, the native story that I chose from the Keepers of the Earth was a perfect segue into the water cycle, which we were starting with. Bringing a branch from the left to the foreground of the picture, my way of bringing in a little bit of botany into this block, and then the mountains in the back were representation of some of the geology that I hope also makes it to the forefront of our block. Dotting in our stars in the night sky, and eventually put a little moon over to the right that's out of screen. Going back in with a darker green to fill out the foliage of the branch. One of the things that I have found in my adult exploration of art, because I am a scientist at heart, I have learned art alongside my children through these years. One of the things that I've learned is that highlights and shadows really can bring depth to a drawing. You will see me go back in many drawings and put little highlights, thinking about where the light is going to be, which I am doing here, and then going back and adding shadows as well. Particularly at the end of a piece, I am going back through and looking for areas that I can put shadows and highlights to bring a little depth and finish off the piece. I've also already put some swaths of different colors that are used within the drawing and other places to bring the drawing together. But these swaths of color ground the tent and the fire in the picture. They also help to depict the space between the fire and the campsite and the mountains in the background. I'm putting in a little shooting star on the side for fun. I'm getting ready at the end of this painting to draw in some little green lights that are representative of the fireflies at night. If you live in Eastern North America, you know our summers have fireflies. Now in Florida, we get our first wave in late April and in the beginning of May. And then we have a different species that comes out later in June and July. And this is perfect for our chemistry block because there are at least 3 indicators that tell us something is a chemical reaction. Might be 4, but I know of 3. 1, it has some kind of exchange of heat. Either it gives off heat or it takes in heat. So it's either hot or cold. The other is that there is a color change, like in dyeing cloth or pull titrations, pH indicators, there is a color change. And the last is that there is emission of light. And in fireflies, the bioluminescence is a chemical reaction that causes an emission of light. And so we will be doing that. And I feel like this is a perfect addition to the chalkboard drawing at the end for the depiction of chemistry. That's our Waldorf chemistry block chalkboard drawing for G7 chemistry. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to hit like. If you'd like to see more homeschooling and math videos from me, hit subscribe. And till next time, enjoy your homeschool journey.